This is your weekend market recap for Saturday, December 10th, 2022. Let's go.
Hey everyone, this is my channel to help investors and traders develop a probability-based mindset to succeed. Also try and keep friends informed of what's going on in the markets and the economy, and also a little real estate content as well.
This is Dan Max at HP Realty, aka the Trading Agent, and this is your weekend market recap for Saturday, December 10th, 2022. Let's get into it. Grab a coffee, grab a glass of water, get comfortable. This video is going to be pretty in-depth. We have to think about a lot coming up this week. You have the FOMC meeting on Wednesday, expecting 50 basis point rate hikes. You got CPI on Tuesday. You've got quad witching, OpEx, end of quarter OpEx. You got seasonality with Santa Claus effect, market potentially rising. You got a million things going on. So please get ready, take some notes, be prepared for this week, because I don't think it's going to be obvious sometimes. One of the things that I want to talk about starting off is that keep in mind the market has been chopping after Monday, went nowhere for 4 days. Don't be surprised how the market, again, we typically talk about the Monday and Tuesday before OpEx. I have a video on it. I would check it out. This Monday and Tuesday might be rather interesting, meaning what? You got CPI Tuesday, right? Monday, probably nothing burger. Maybe up, maybe down. You don't know. But we always talk about this bull and bear traps. You should watch the video on this as well if you're not familiar. The first direction in a trap is the side getting trapped. So if the market drops, it could be a bear trap. And if it rises, it could be a bull trap. Either way, my mindset is to let it play out. Try not to be early. Try not to be what I would say, predictive of things. Just let things play out, because the hardest part of trading is anticipating the moves with high clarity, right? It's easier to be the second mouse, as we talk about. First mouse gets the trap. Second mouse gets probably the cheese, typically, right? So if you can think like that and you go, okay, well, maybe not, maybe always when you're looking at the computer is not the best time to trade. Maybe it's maybe that mindset can help you gain patience to be, all right, let's see what happens. And if you miss something and you're a little late, it's better than being a little early and getting blown out. So also be aware that the Thursday post OpEx has been a day of actual importance. It seems like the Wednesday becomes a nothing burger, and then the Thursday is the big news. So, or not big news, just the real reaction. So if you're thinking like Wednesday is the trap, Thursday is the real news, please be very thoughtful. This is not going to be easy, because right now, in my personal thinking, is the sentiment from the banks. Everyone's expecting a recession next year. The Feds know that everyone thinks that. So will raising 50 basis points at this point matter? Really, no, not really at all. However, the anticipation of what they're going to do next year is really what is sinking in. However, people have to be very aware. When the Feds decide to pivot and they actually start cutting rates, now flattening out the rates, interest rate hikes isn't really as bearish as cutting, because cutting implies something is wrong with the economy and they're making moves. So at this point, with this commentary, as you can see, like there's a lot of moving parts here that we don't know the answer to. I mean, the easiest and most obvious thing is to wait for extremes and trade them accordingly. If you get big downs to certain levels, which we'll look at and take a look at, maybe you play the up. If the market rises, let it play out, then there's probably a short. That's how I look at it. There's not an easy answer. People always want that, and I'm just telling you, in trading, sometimes you don't have to be invested all year, all the time, trying to figure out what's going to happen every day, every hour, every minute. That is extremely dangerous. So if you're new to the channel, please subscribe, hit the notification bell, do a lot of live chats. Please check out the Discord, the Twitter page, always posting what we're up to, what we're thinking. Check out the Back to Beginners. Again, here you go. How to trade options expiration. This is option expiration, and you have an FOMC meeting, and you have traps. I mean, all those videos should be reviewed if you have time. Bull and bear traps. Yeah, Monday and Tuesday before the FOMC meeting. I mean, there's just a lot going on. And, think about it this way. The more things that overlay, whatever, the more important the potential reaction becomes, but also becomes very, what I call trappish, right? Like if everybody, and here, I'll just end on this. If everybody's anticipating the market to drop, recession next year, market looks weak, and the market's flatlining and then dumps, that could be the start of the next down move, or it actually could be a trap, right? Because think about it. Why? We talk about GDP being 2.9% third quarter. Next quarter, that's probably going to be positive as well. The worst is behind us. We really need significantly higher interest rates or Russia, the wild card, and European mistakes playing out in sense of energy. And I'm not talking about European mistakes in the World Cup. Portugal losing to Morocco. That's hilarious. Anyway, didn't get a chance to watch the game, but just saw the score. I'm like, you got to be kidding. Bitcoin, say it over and over and over. Unless you feel like you really have to trade this, this looks like no man's land, going nowhere. Highway to the dead zone. You know what I mean? Not danger zone. This is just, if you're short from higher, okay, well, you need to make new lows. If you're buying down here, you're probably in a world of pain in the sense of since November. You just haven't really seen much of a return. Now, again, if you're trading for small returns and you like the stability of this, I get it. But personally for me, move on. Oil, a lot of things that are playing out. And maybe this is why I think sometimes the recession stuff being screamed is showing up in oil at the moment. And even though the market is kind of ignoring oil's making new lows off the highs, right? Is this a trap? Potentially. Again, this is the hardest part here. You get stopped out and that's your job. You have your stops. Now you start making new lows. What do? Do you just jump back in and buy it? No, you kind of have to wait. Because right now, even if what's sad is the Keystone Pipeline leaking oil into the creeks, all this stuff that's going on, supply issues abound. It feels like the options game, or not, the futures, oil futures rollover, I'm writing that down again, is an interesting thing that could potentially be keeping price down. We'll see what happens near term. Now, again, I think the futures, is it this Wednesday, next Wednesday? I can't remember. The VIX futures, I don't have it in front of me, but you can look it up. You can look up futures expiration dates. I apologize, I don't have them in front of me at the moment. I don't want to stop, but you can look them up. They're coming up soon. It's contract rollover. There's usually selling if you're down into it. Here's the thing about oil, and I've said this over and over and over again. There's tremendous amount of supply constraints, but oil can play games with the action. Think of it like manipulated, gold probably more of a go nowhere kind of action. Oil, they love to manipulate the up and down price of it. At this point, if it holds the 68 area, 66 to 68, probably bullish. Quicker, near term. If it gets down and doesn't hold, it might get down into the 60s. And that to me would be the best floor possible. I think refilling the SPR, supply constraints, I don't care if there is a recession. And the thing is, it's not a depression. It's not like COVID where everyone freaked out and thought the world was going to end. It's not like 2009 where the housing market was crashing, everything was going to end. At this point, it seems more like a milder inflation-based recession with interest rates having to go higher. But supply constraints create a floor, right? So 60s. I feel like a 60s, you see what happens. If Friday was the bottom, I'll be impressed because you don't really see ever free Friday bottoms. Just keep that in mind. Natural gas, pretty wide and loose. It seems to be ahead of oil in the sense of what it's doing. Oil's making new lows. Natural gas already did that, rallying. Weatherman Dan here to tell you your forecast for the country. At this rate, I think it's supposed to be cold earlier next week, if I remember right, going into the Fed, which is hilarious. Yeah, and then it's going to be cold next week. At least here in Denver. Sorry if that's rather selfish of me, but that's the truth. So at this point, I would play the game from the mindset of, if you're playing natural gas, just think about the Freeport stuff, like the inventory builds that are coming up until they can release it. And it sounds like if that's the case, we're probably going to be dumping a bunch of natural gas to Europe if the RE's open and Europe, keeps putting caps on Russia. And Russia says, you know what? We're done playing games with you guys. You get nothing and like it. No soup for you. So that's the wild card here, right? We're kind of playing the action based on the levels. It's hard to be late, but if you think about oil again, natural gas, same thing. They had some of this seasonality where you get, look at this, a bottom early December and a retest during OpEx. Well, maybe that's the early December, late November bottom, and here's like the blowout trap that leads to what? The final low, right? Again, natural gas, same thing. My friend Sonny here talking about it, said, hey, just look at these repeating patterns. I agreed. Here you go. Natural gas could just be in a choppy, sloppy zone. It's hard to play natural gas when you're just trying to play weatherman because, again, it's probably not going to be as volatile as it would be due to what? Supply constraints and everything going on in the world. Sorry to rant on that, but it's that important. Think about it. Like oil and gas, as we say, commodities, if they start rising and ripping higher, that is what puts the feds in a pickle to have to raise quicker to put the market potentially into an upcoming recession much quicker and deeper. When we say, because everyone's thinking of mild recession, that's fine. But the key is if you want to see an absolute market smash beat down, you need to see interest rates go higher, inflation kick up, and the whole, margin get, consumer gets squeezed, margins get squeezed, everybody loses, right, with inflation. Like that, again, if CPI is coming down, expecting it to come down slightly near term, Feds are gonna try to cheerlead it. It's just we don't know the reaction. We don't know how the market wants to react, right? I'm anticipating, again, I'm not a bull. Long term, I'm still a bear, but it doesn't mean it can't go however it's going to go. Dollar basing at the 200-day. I said this 1,000 times. The final dollar move is a blowout top. Now, I know there's a lot of things going on around the world about China trying to get their currency being used for oil transactions. We get it. They're trying to secure a big deal with Saudi Arabia. Fine, whatever. Dollar still the financial transaction tool for the world. Until that changes, we'll see. And again, remember, the trap would be up to be the top. Like Tesla, think about it running, going straight higher. Holding the 200-day. At this point, it's more likely going to pop than drop. That's my thought process on it. TLT, bonds got slaughtered on Friday. And we talked about this novice gap potential hitting the 0.618. I know my man Savaline, if you're short this, congratulations. Now here you're back at support. Does interest rates rise, TLT tank, going into the Fed meeting? Good question. I mean, you got in up at the highs in the 109s. High five to you, my friend. At this point, you just got to watch the levels. It seems very likely, logical why it would hold here and maybe chop until the Feds. We don't know. You've got a badass entry. The only question is, do you have a lower high coming? That's typically how it is. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's going to need a retest. And as I thought, I don't really see interest rates going higher. Everyone expects them to, but I see them stabilizing first. So, mortgage rates around upper 5s, 7s, like that 1 point range. TLT, congrats to that short. I'd be watching because I think this is what's going to lead down to some gold droppage. Vixen. Talked about holding over the 20-day. I still like a 20, high 23, maybe 24, extreme 25 test at some point this week. How much more could it spike? I mean, you always could get like a bigger spike on FOMC stuff. Always possible. Russia, you never know. Would I be short VIX? No. But do I expect some sort of retest? Yeah. I've talked about this chop bottoms. Chop bottoms. Chop, 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 chop bottoms. Right? So we'll see what happens. I mean, it's pretty regular. It's kind of like your poop cycle. It's pretty regular, hopefully. And the chop bottom, I mean, could you get down into the 18s? I don't know. I still think I'd be watching the 20s to just kind of observe if I really thought volatility was coming in. Sorry, my disgusting examples of being regular, just thinking about it. Ate some Chipotle the other day. Swear to God, man. Every time you eat out, this food quality is just gone to junk, man. I feel like always something. I never would get stomach aches after eating food from out, but every time it's like, man, you pick up Chipotle, it's not the same. Certain places, the food quality just seems, eat at home. Cook your own meals, right? SPY. As I said, basically since Monday, it just got in this choppy zone. You had the lows, you had the highs. People were probably trading this, trying to anticipate big moves. But as we said, until it presented itself, market was probably going to be stuck until the FOMC meeting. Here are the scenarios. Pop, fail, drop, pop, test the 415 to 420 zone. That's how I look at it. That's my trace scenarios of the semana. 3 scenarios, right? Again, I always love writing this stuff down. It's down to the 390, right? 390 area. Keep in mind that they could knock stops and pop, and flop, or the pop up to, again, 415, 420. The pop and flop, if you're looking at the zone, obviously. Let me draw it for you guys. Oopsies. My bad. Low Ciento. I would be watching up here, obviously. 403. 403 area. Now, keep in mind, please don't bring a ruler and say, well, it hit 405. You were wrong. Whatever. You see what I'm saying? Like, I would say, here, let me just even, like, expand it. Because say, all right, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'd be looking for this bubble. Let me edit the color. And again, people want, like, they want to know, like, exactly where to hit. And it's like, if it was that easy, everybody could get rich on trading. Remember, this is just like any sports game. Someone can get injured. Something can change. A variable can change. You bet on a game, and, the star player gets the third foul with 5 minutes left in the first half. Variables change. You have to update, right? Like, you can pivot. That's what I'd be watching for. Hope that helps. QQQ. Doggy. Always been dogging. We talked about Q's crap. I'd watch this, 50-day backside of this old trend line. Has it topped? Yeah. I mean, it feels top-ish, but keep in mind, had a lot of chop in June through May, right? Do we need to do, like, one more, like, stellar, got her groove back blow off to the 200-day? Like, that always becomes the issue, right? That always becomes the issue because new money coming in from January effect. Maybe you have Santa Claus rally. All these variables that just, again, it's better to be slightly late and wait for extremes than to be sitting here all in right now going, well, I'm anticipating this. I hope people see the immense amount of danger they're putting themselves in by doing that. IWM, we talked about it lagging, peaking first. It's definitely lagging. Making pretty significant lows. So that, the market spies up near the 100-day. Q's piece of crap. We don't care. IWM 50-day. That's interesting because keep in mind, IWM, the market could rally and IM could lag. That's what gets so hard about this. And it just gets back to the 200-day when the market made new highs. Like, that's possible. We've talked about IWM peaking first. Well, if you're looking at the market and you're saying to yourself, what's the trade here? I would just keep an eye on it. I personally, again, I'm repeating this over and over just to put it out there in your mind. Wait for extremes. 50-day, I don't know, maybe it's the 50% FIP, I don't know. But remember, this 176 area is rather important. We talk about it's very, the VAP zones, the swing points, the fibs, they all line up after a move is completed. It feels like the move is up and the IWM is over. Just keep that in mind. Could we stretch it and play out like where the upside might be that could like line up to other fib spots? Where are you? Little square. Where is the other square? Hold on, apologize. Do it on my own. Remember, I love doing this game, running out the fibs and see where they line up. Right, if that's your high, what would be the next one? Okay, that 195. Interesting. That's the only other, I just don't, man, that's tough to get up to 195 from here because you have to go pretty aggressively. Again, but I guess if the market rallied, it doesn't seem likely. We talk about IWM, lag central. Lag. Remember, market peaked December, January 2022, 21, 22. Remember, IWM peaked November 2021. Here, I'll show you again. Just for references again. Sorry if this is a longer video, but you need to see this stuff. Here you go. Early November peaked. When did the SPY peak? Early January. Keep that in mind. All right. Let's get into gold because I think a lot of folks personally think it's going to the moon. I am resorting back to what we typically do with gold in December. We wait for the bottom. And when is the gold bottom? done this a million times in other videos. It's typically there's a seasonal pullback. Maybe it's tax loss selling. Maybe it has to do with the feds. Maybe it has to do with OpEx. Maybe it has to do contract rollover. But there's a pullback in December. How deep? We'll see. This candle, look at this. Doji retest. That is your short, potentially, with a tight stop. Now, again, with stops, right? With stops. With stops, with stops, with stops. We talk about 0.786, 200-day. Talk about retest. Gold loves to retest. I mean, it makes logical sense to me. Bonds got beat up. So now what? Watch the levels. I mean, if you've been following gold, you know it's got a history of levels. I always like to start on the monthly since this trade's starting to get really interesting. Or sorry, let's go to the weekly. The monthly we know is at the 20-month. Here's the 100 and 200 week. I personally would love to see it back in the 158s. Minimum 160, maybe even down into the what I would think probably the ultimate bottom, like the best bottom. Sorry, it's like come on, drive the car. You can do it. Well, this is the weekly. Oh, it's like it's right here, silly. My bad. It's on a different screen. 20-month. I mean, I'd love to see it back in the 148s as well. We'll see. I mean, you have to, ascertain your risk or whatever. Know it. I personally think gold, someone's like, oh, it's down 7 straight months. Yeah, it's due to bounce. There it goes. Bounces the 20-month, backs off. Great trade if you're shorting it. But just be aware. I mean, it could hold up high and tight in front of the feds. And honestly, that probably would be a chopping action in front of the feds with the feds is going to be the most difficult part of this trade if you're short it. If you're in at the highs and you're trading around it, badass. Great trade. Silver, wow, another little higher, 0.618. Acting better, that's for sure. We talk about this, being usually like faking out, or Jay Soul's saying like silver faking out gold sometimes. Yeah, sometimes it also leads. This gap is a little curious to me. Now, again, we talk about gaps, novice gaps, professional gaps. You've got 1, 2, and 3 at this point. I would watch silver. I mean, I personally think silver will lead gold. I don't know if you want to short it, but if this turns back over and that gap is the final, then yeah. Just remember, if you do decide to short anything or go long anything, you have to have stops. You have to have risk management. Just be prepared that your stops could get gapped. And so how do you act on it? That's why it's like sometimes it's better to be a little late. GDXJ, this is great to confirm that metals were not looking so hot. A lower high, 200-day, close at the low of the day. That would help me if I'm shorting. GDX, same kind of thing. Popped up, got over the 200-day, closed at the low of the day, below the previous day's lows. Doesn't look bullish. Here's another red flag for miners. AG. Silver making new highs in Panama, or First Majestic at the channel lows. Something's wrong there, right? AEM, we talked about it popping up, watching for, retest. Well, look at that. Closed at the low of the day. Your favorite piece of crap, Newmont. Even as gold and miners were rallying, this thing had no lift. You're welcome. Short the shit. Short the crap. Oops. Look at that. 20-day. Now, could it hold here? Maybe. It's just, we talked about high volume highs and lows love to retest. Hit the 49 area. Goodbye. I personally think, again, it seems like these things are lining up to get hit here. PAAS, it's one of those things where I like it, but I don't like it. Kind of not touching it. Waiting out. I don't like their deal they're doing with Humana. It's not good. I think it's a terrible idea. Tech. AMD, no love today. Close at the low of the days while certain other semis are rallying. I said this a lot. Keep in mind, like semis become a commodity. And if they open up lines with China again to sell overseas, is that bullish or bearish? I don't know. Typically like, they can get into their markets, but China's trying to create their own chips. They just want to flood our market. So with the glut and everything that's going on in the world, with the amount of chips everywhere, this sector is going to be extremely volatile. As we said, it's more likely a short. You saw, I know some folks took the NVIDIA trade today. High five. Nice work. You waited. Channel high, 200-day, 0.786, all aligned. Congratulations to you. Today's candle, keep an eye on it. You know, that looks like a good short, in my opinion. It's just hard when the market might not crash or smash going into the Fed meeting. So you just got to be prepared for mental chop fest. You could drop and then you could rally back. I mean, there's so many perspectives here, but you've got the best trade. Your entries are now your stops or shortly above it. Great trade. SMH popped 224, 225. We said watch this area, right? The 200-day. I mean, I've got the alarm there. Did not get it. Hit it, bounced off, compressing. It's like the mix of AMD and NVIDIA, right? Like all the semiconductor sector in general looks mid-range. And I'm not talking like mid-range jumper. I'm talking like mid-range between the tops and the lows, right? 228, 229, and the 215. What do you want to do with that? I would trade around it, leave it alone, wait for extremes. Adobe, just kind of watch this stuff. Made a higher low today. I mean, held up pretty well, which this is why there's a little bit of confusion. It's like, I'm not really sure. Apple popped, flopped again. This range 140s has to hold. I'd love to see it pop and then short in the 155s. Amazon, people are trying to pick the bottom here. I mean, you do have a higher low technically. A lot of dojis, a lot of indecision. It just could take a couple days. Again, is Amazon going to rip off before the Feds? Probably not. Know your level. So I'd watch 86 for that bottom. CRM got beaten on earnings. Gap down, continuation at the channel lows. Reference lows, whatever. I mean, it's probably due to bounce. I mean, if the market rallies, this thing could bounce pretty aggressively, 10%. Keep in mind, 10% on 130. It used to be a $320 stock or whatever it was. What was the exact high? 311. 311, nice. Good band. Good music to listen to while you're trading. Now you're at 1311.11. 131.11. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, a 10-15% rally could happen quickly if the market got short covering. Goog, man, this looked great. Now it doesn't. Watch the gap. Watch that 91 area. I mean, some tech looks better than others, right? Meta holding up. Set at 20-day. Probably can get back up to the 120, 8 to 130 level. Watch it. Hold in the 20-day. Microsoft, dollar kind of chopping around, but it seems to be making higher lows. Forming a base. We talk about multi-day ranges. NDAQ. Congrats if you're short this. I got squeezed out. I love it. I love seeing it. I mean, I'm still happy for other people. I'd love to be making money on this, but yeah, your entries, your stops. I still have alarms up here if it ever happens. Praying it turns into something like this. And my prayers, God doesn't answer my trading prayers. I don't really expect him to. It's not life or death here. It's just gambling, essentially. I'm hoping we're, playing a game. If not, and you're short, love it. Love it, love it, love it. Trade around your position. Remember, just be aware, market's going to be a little sloppy, doppy, dicey, whatever, sloppy, dicey, whatever you want to call it. MicroStrategy, man, it seems to be building up. See how you're seeing all these conflicting things in the market. This thing looks pretty good, right? Netflix got an upgrade today. Really frustrated, Wells Fargo, that you are somehow copying my trades. Today's action feels like a buddy pass. I hope it comes back down under 300 because if the market does rally, I think this thing could get higher. This little trap game, I'm trying to see if there's another one. I mean, obviously you see this a lot with Netflix where it'll get upgrades. It's like you have to go back into the bull market and then it would just come right back down and then rally. I'm trying to, that for another time. I'll do that on my own. Just keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on it because it got up pretty high. It got pretty close to the targets. Is the trade dead? Personally, for me, yeah, dead in the sense I have no desire to play either or until I get extremes. It's kind of like the market. Roblox, put this one on your just mind because if that Activision deal fails with Microsoft, I don't know why, but somebody bought a ton of this stuff down here. Are they a deal to be had with at some point and bought out? Kids addicted to this stuff? I mean, I've said watch the 30 area. People were like, oh, I'm going to take a trade today. And I'm like, please don't, for the love of God. And then what does it do? It just kind of goes nowhere. Tesla, talked about this one, retesting, possibly popping back. I mean, essentially, it doesn't look bad. I've said that. I thought this might be a professional gap, and it could go, and it did go for a little bit. Now you're back down there. It's the whole thing with the market, right? It's like, is this really going to lift? That's your guess as good as mine. Tesla at this point, back testing the trend line. We always like that. It's just, do you trust the market? Is it leading chop to this to get beaten another level? Or is this about to rally back, maybe to the 50-day, maybe back to this 207? Either way, I mean, you have to trade however you want. Some people take it, and I like criticize, like, you got to be careful with trading during last week, because it's like you're not going to get more umph, and people are like, oh, I made good money trading. Okay, I bet I can acknowledge that. That's clearly possible, but are you really looking at this for the big moves? Like, that's what I look for. Like, if I'm trying to trade for a point or two while I'm waiting for the feds, it's hard because you're never really going to get any surprise upside. That's the hardest part sometimes, and that's why I took a lot of the time off not to trade. It's like there's not going to be a surprise upside at this point. The surprise is something happens in Russia, right? That's not good. That's not the surprise I want. X talked about the stuff potentially pulling back near term. Not surprised. Said watch the 25 area. Here you come. That candle was a little dubious, right? Little doge at the high, hammer. Here we go. Watch what happens here. And if commodities start, and again, I wouldn't be surprised if commodities pull back in front of the feds, right? Like, that doesn't surprise you. Nucor pulls back a couple points. That's why overall it's like, just let things play out. Oil, gas, all this stuff. 20-day, watch what happens in 140s. Now, if it market peels, I mean, you clearly know where the next support would be. It's got to be somewhere in this like mid 130s. All these like converging moving averages, right? Keep an eye on it. VALE up 50 cents today. That was interesting. Making a new high. It's getting choppy. Your guess is as good as mine on this one. I've been a little reluctant to say much on it, other than I'll just wait for it to retest the lows. We'll see what happens. Arrow, a lot of people like copper, holding under the channel highs. I'm not really gonna make anything other than this action doesn't really look that bullish to me. It's dying on light volume. Choppy volatility. CCJ, again, the worst trade out there that I thought was possible. Someone's selling long dated puts. This thing at highs and VIX at lows. You got to learn from. You got to study. You got to back test options. You got to get comfortable with that stuff. I have videos, very little on options, because it's a style of gambling that is so much more aggressive that you have to be able to know how to trade first of all, and understand the markets really, really well before you even really mess with options at all. A lot of folks in the room can do it. A lot of folks shouldn't. And that's the reality of it at this point. With selling options or playing options. I mean, CCJ, I mean, the Westinghouse deal, keep in mind, Westinghouse has been accused many times of doing a lot of shady stuff. I'd be remiss to think that their books are clean. Let's just call it that. CF told you all week, waiting for the 200-day. Gets there on Friday. Yeah. Not interested. I'm just not, It's like, all right, let's be patient. Let's draw some trend lines for fun. Funsies, I think that's probably a little. Let's see if we can squeeze that one in. Here you go. You got the bottoms of that. You got the bottom of that area down here. Now again, wicks don't necessarily as important as like body closes. Sometimes you play both, whatever. I mean, it makes sense. Look at this. Could be a higher low right here in the 97, 95 range. Right? Yeah. Watch it. UAN, just, watching this one. This broke their little trend line. I guess that trend line wasn't that important. But what's happening here, like, you don't want to see, you don't really want to see this area get taken out. Just another name. CF, Mosaic, flat. Doesn't look that bad. Holding here at 46, 47 level. If not, it's coming back to 43 trend line. I mean, again, people are like trend line and a volume at price zone. And like the bottom of the VAP zone, and retest of range lows. NTR, again, holding up pretty damn well. Pop, flop, chop. I said watch what happens here in the 75, 76 range. That's your choice, honestly. It looks better to me because it has had the blowout. And better to me versus, say, like Mosaic. I still like CF if it holds up high and tight. Keep an eye on it. I mean, there's no certainty here. This is why it gets so hard. It's like, why do you have to always trade? If things get hard, sometimes it's better to pull back. Watch. XBI, let's running through these faster. Chop slop. I've talked about this. Like pop, flop, flop, pop. It's in a big tight zone. It very reminiscent of 2008, 2009. It just went nowhere. It's probably dead. But when it's up, it helps confirm market up. XLF, we talk about what? Watching this like 200-day, this box down here, choppy action, you're pretty close. I don't know why you wouldn't do that or fill the gap. I mean, you can just here add an alarm. 3220s makes sense. Is it done? That's the question. Or is it going to make a lower high? I would like to see a head and shoulders, preferably. I'd like to see the market rally, lower highs in certain things. That would be the easiest short. Like trap everybody shorting who shorted before the Feds. Like penalize everybody who had to get in early. Right? Like think about penalty. Penalizing the early last week traders. Like those are the people that got to get burned, right? And then the move can start. Just think about it. The market's trying to take the most amount of money from the most amount of people. That's how you do it. But is it always that way? No. But that's to me the most logical. Morgan Stanley lays off 2% of their workforce, hits the fib, gap coming right back. Here you go. Said watch the 90s. Now, when I say 90s, I'm not saying just the whole decade. No, I'm just kidding. Like the 90 area. I mean, it could get, like I said, 90, 91. Keep an eye on it. I like it for a potential short. The market's going to roll. JP Morgan, not rallying as much, kind of chopping here. 20-day, watch the 135s. Talked about that a bazillion times. Let's get into solar. Yeah, it's starting to look a little dicey here. It has to hold these lows. If it does, it should be okay. ENPH all over the place every day. I mean, if you want to trade it for points, I get it. The alarm, yeah, I mean, it got over it, but I'm still just not that interested. It's still holding up, doesn't look terrible. Sedgerton, same thing, holding up, doesn't really show me anything that's worth shorting other than if you have these levels and you see this as a distribution, which you can make a case for, hopefully you're shorting near the highs and you're trading around it because this is where the trading around the position is being able to like, oh, boom, 10 points, 10 points, 5 points, 5 points. You see what I mean? Trade around the position. First Solar, not holding up as well as the other ones. Doji today, kind of ominous in my opinion. Coming into some areas here. We'll see. I mean, if it's dead, it's dead. I still somehow think you're going to get some lower high, or this is like the chop action. And could it get down to the 50-day? I don't know. I have no position. I missed a short. I can't really, if you're not right on things, you shouldn't be like anticipating anything with perfection. I just look at the action and go, well, if the market's holding up, this has been dropping, this got a few downgrades. If you really want to get the market makers to like screw some people over, you probably got to rally it first. That's what would seem logical. HYG always got corporate debt kind of right in your solar looking at it. Doesn't look that bad. This is where, again, mixed signals abound. You'd think corporate debt would be rolling over. It's not, right? Holding up pretty well. Let's get into oil and be done with it. Oil, USO today, choppy, sloppy action. Check out some of the intraday because I always like to see. I was out hitting the ski hills as one should this time of year when there's nothing better to do. Where is it? 120, 61. Did I? No, there it is. I mean, you had some volume into the last part of the day. You can see it here. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, Doji, I get it. Patience. I don't know. It's waiting for a headline. Like everything seems like it should, this is the hardest part. When you see something and everything says it should be going higher and it's not, red flag. Because that sometimes means that something's going to lead to what? A trap. Or it's coming like at some waiting for some news. Nat gas, same thing, like popped up, filled the gap, got down into the low, was it sixes, mid sixes again. I don't trust this UNG. Remember, people are like, oh, I've got long-term calls. Remember, you can't really buy long-term calls super far out because these things deteriorate. You got to kind of trade around it. I mean, if you do buy calls, you better buy in the money at worst. I don't know. I mean, I personally would not buy long-dated calls on the USO beyond, say, 8 weeks, 12 weeks. If you're buying out in March, second quarter next year, That's tough. That is tough. Well, I hope it works though ultimately, but we'll see. The UNG, remember, it deteriorates. Got to be careful. XOP had in my mind like the 129s. Getting close. Maybe even down to the mid 120s. That would be sick, right? Because this thing is due to bounce. Like you strip this thing down pretty hard from 160 down to 120s to pull 25% off of this with the huge short interest, and then rush a trigger something. Like that to me is like, watch, like 2 eyeballs. I'm like drawing 2 eyeballs. They kind of look like boobs with nipples, obviously, when you draw them. Sorry. Sorry, trying to make something funny up. We'll see what happens here. It doesn't look like you need to be early at all. And where's Gush at? Man, this thing gets slaughtered. Maybe you get this down in the low ones. 100s, 110. I don't know. We'll see what happens. ExxonMobil holding up. They had some really good news about buybacks and cash flow and investing. And the stock is not acting well. So it just tells you that these names aren't ready. PXD down another 7 points. Again, be thankful you have stops, for the love of God. I said watch now what happens if you get into the 200s. If you're short it, cool. I think someone is short it that hit me up, and I'm like, makes sense. Makes dollars, and it's working. You can't really argue with what's working. So at this point, be safe, be thoughtful. Again, goal is 10 properties in 10 years. If you're making money and you are just growing your trading account but not taking it and putting in anything that'll pay you passive income like real estate, you are just growing your account to blow up a bigger account. Been there before. The goal is to treat this like a business, pull money out, be thoughtful, be smart, pay yourself, pay your taxes, treat your family, invest in other assets. Having the biggest trading account is rather dangerous. If you don't understand that, then think about it. Why? If you have a bigger trading account and you just keep increasing your trade sizes, you're literally no different than when you had maybe the small account with the same trade sizes. You're just upping the bets. And if you remember the volatility you had when you had smaller accounts because you went big and used your whole account frequently, it's no difference than when you grow your account and you use your whole account frequently. That happens. Been there, done that, seen how that works. So let me know how I can help. Always here for you guys. Love you guys. Be safe. Have a great weekend. I will talk to you shortly.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, stop by the Discord room. A link is in the description below. Also, if you'd like to help support more free content, the PayPal link is in the description as well. I appreciate your continued support of the channel.